let me shut up. This should be on story. I got my order. Oh, okay. All right.
I'll let you move if you want to.
Okay. All right.
It's called live mannequin modeling, and the technique is guaranteed to attract quite a bit of attention, no matter what the models wear. Terry Hannum and Angela Carpenter say it's not easy standing perfectly still, and on top of that, it's not a high-paid profession. That's one reason the two dancers and Huntington College students model in their spare time. Standing outside a Montgomery Mall men's store sporting the latest fashions, the girls say it's the kids who know right away they're living models, while parents aren't sure. Once on the pedestal and poised, Terry and Angela pick an imaginary spot to focus their concentration on. How long can they stand in one spot?
The longest time is probably about 10 minutes, but we've been averaging about 5 or 7 minutes alternating on and off. The main thing that we think about is not looking at people, try not to move, and just try not to laugh. That's the main thing. Don't laugh.
Of course, there's the question, what does a live mannequin do when she gets an itch? Well, Angela and Terry say fight the urge as long as possible, but if it doesn't work, scratch it. Paul Roth, WSFA TV News.
One of the reasons the Christmas parade has been held every year for 20 years is that no one organization pays for it. The main expense is the professionally built floats, which are sponsored by 15 local businesses. Parade organizer Gene Reed says the parade is a success year after year because everyone who participates is there because he wants to be, not because he's getting paid.
It's a community spirit. We put this parade on a break-even basis because we don't pay anyone to participate in the parade, and we don't pay any of the band's expenses or anything like that. And by getting the sponsors to pay for the cost of the professionally built floats that we get from Georgia, that lets us do all this on a break-even basis, and it's a nice big community effort once a year to have a great big parade.
The evening will start at 6:45 with a ceremony at Court Square where Governor James and Mayor Falmer will light the Christmas tree. At 7 o'clock, the parade will form at Crampton Bowl. It will proceed down Dexter Avenue and finally end near the Civic Center on Commerce Street. Reed says the parade will go on come rain or shine or snow. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News. The Green Acres subdivision in southeast Montgomery was one of the first to be hit. The tornado smashed about 12 homes and damaged about 40 others. Tree limbs, power lines, and roofing materials litter the streets. But the only injuries have been minor. A spokeswoman at St. Margaret's Hospital says they've treated about 20 persons so far, mainly for cuts and bruises. James Simmons' home was one of the hardest hit.
I heard the siren warnings. We'd been outside maybe 5 minutes before just looking at, and there was nothing. And we're inside and heard the noise start, and I knew what it was, or I suspected what it was. The wife was back at the bathroom and with the youngest child, and I was looking. I came all the way up to the front door here looking for the other child, and it hit, bright flash of light, and then the wind and everything, and then nothing, and nobody was hurt, thank God.
Some families are trying to patch up holes in their roofs to keep the rain from damaging those belongings the tornado missed. Other families are trying to find a place to spend the night. No one knows if it were the same tornado or another one that moments later hit Fieldcrest Apartments north of Green Acres. There, the high winds turned a car over and caused 4 more injuries. Many apartments lost windows, some have whole walls missing. About 90 apartments were affected there. Police Chief Charles Swindle says he's surprised there weren't more injuries.
It was mainly the roofs that were blown off and the windows that were blown out. I'm surprised that we didn't have more folks cut with glass, but we didn't.
Now Swindle says the main concern is finding homes for the victims. Many will be staying at hotels such as the Holiday Inn and the Ramada Inn. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News. About 12 homes in the Green Acres subdivision are destroyed. 40 others lost garages, windows, or parts of their roofs. The winds downed power lines and sent tree limbs hurtling through the air and into buildings. A tornado also hit the Fieldcrest apartment complex north of Green Acres. There, whole sides of buildings are gone, and the exposed rooms resemble doll houses. One Fieldcrest resident says she looked outside when she heard a roaring noise.
Saw it coming on the right-hand side, and so I didn't even have time to shut the door. I just ran inside and ran in my bathroom, and as soon as I got in the bathroom, just glass went flying everywhere.
And you were the only one in the apartment?
Only one.
What all did you see when you stepped outside?
When I stepped out and looked to the right, it was just a big funnel of wind, and there was trash, there was leaves, there was branches, just wood, boards just flying through the air, and it was not 50 feet up that way.
And you went straight to your bathroom?
Ran straight to the bathroom.
90 Fieldcrest apartments sustained damage. 30 of those are practically irreparable. Police say it's surprising they've received no reports of deaths and that only about 20 persons have been injured. Most of those injuries are minor. Homeowners whose houses are demolished say they're just thankful their families escaped. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News.
Montgomery police will be patrolling the damaged areas tonight and making sure who goes in and out of Green Acres, the Fieldcrest apartments, and affected areas in the Gunter Industrial Park. However, the Red Cross is providing food and shelter to the tornado victims. 2 Red Cross shelters are set up, one located at the Fieldcrest Apartment Clubhouse, the other out of a Red Cross van in Green Acres. The Ramada Inn and the Holiday Inn East are providing shelter for those in need. However, most victims have found a place for the night.
Well, right now we've got some people in local motels, and then most of them have already gone to their friends or families and are already housed for the night.
If you're wondering what you can do to help, Montgomery police say unless you live in the affected areas, stay out. Sightseers only hinder their efforts. However, the Red Cross says if you have some free time, their staff of 15 volunteers could always use some help. Paul Roth, WSFA TV News.
Bernstein says during the months he covered Watergate, the Nixon administration often tried to direct scrutiny toward the behavior of the press and away from the behavior of politicians. That method of attacking the press left the public with what Bernstein calls a legacy of contempt for the press.
And I think perhaps that legacy of contempt may be the most lasting product of the Nixon administration. The legacy is very much with us today in the contempt that so many public officials have for the press and for the functioning of a truly free press. I think we see that contemptuous attitude in the person of the Chief Justice of the United States, Warren Burger, perhaps the most important of the Nixon appointments. We see it in a series of public and private remarks that the Chief Justice has made that have been intemperate, injudicious, prejudicial, show a fundamental lack of understanding about the press and about the reportorial process. And more important, we see that legacy from the Nixon administration, that legacy of contempt, in a series of rulings by the Burger Court, rulings that have at the same time made it more difficult for us to do our job and at the same time have eroded the concept of a truly free press and the concept of the First Amendment. And that same legacy of contempt, I would suggest, has allowed the Burger Court, particularly through the Chief Justice and also through Justice White, to correctly perceive that there's going to be no public outcry if the press is tied up, if the press is hamstrung, if our sails are trimmed a little bit.
But Bernstein says it's not only because of politicians and the Supreme Court that members of the press have credibility problems.
I think one factor might be our own arrogance, that we in the press have done a terrible job of explaining ourselves to others. We've ensured public enmity by remaining a closed institution while demanding openness of others, less by design, I suspect, than by sheer short-sightedness. But if I had to pick a single subject next to the Supreme Court on which the press does a truly terrible job of reporting, I would think it's the press itself, an institution vested with huge power in this society, and yet barely covered in terms of its influence, in terms of how it functions, in terms of explaining how stories get in newspapers, how stories get on the air. The best advice I think that I ever heard given to a Washington reporter came from that same John N. Mitchell very early in the Nixon administration. He sat down with a group of reporters at the Justice Department and he said, "Watch what we do and not what we say." And I would suggest that had we done that in the first 4 years of the Nixon administration, perhaps there would have been no Watergate, no constitutional crisis as it came to be regarded by many people.
Bernstein says if more reporters had asked questions rather than acting as stenographers and repeating what politicians said, then Watergate might never have happened in the first place. Lisa Nielsen reporting for Alabama Illustrated.
If you have letters and packages to mail, there are a few things you'll need to be aware of. We told you on our expanded newscast Wednesday night something about the new rules. Oddly shaped mail costs 7 cents plus the regular 15-cent stamp to be sent through the mail. And envelopes less than 3.5 by 5 inches are not accepted at all. The post office officials are urging everyone to mail early. Last year, the post office handled 1 billion pieces of mail in December more than November or January. And this year will be even more hectic.
What we do is encourage people to mail early. The earlier, the better. We found years ago when we had mail-in deadlines that people tended to wait till that deadline came before they mailed. So now we just encourage people to mail early as they can.
All right, but if you had to give a deadline on packages and cars within the United States, what would it be?
I'd say no later than the 17th of December. Much, much earlier if possible.
There's a Sunday right before Tuesday Christmas. Is that going to pose a problem in getting the mail out?
Well, of course we don't have delivery on Sunday. The letter carriers don't work on Sunday, so if people wait very late about mailing, it could pose a problem. But if people will mail early, I don't see any problem with this Christmas mailing.
However, the most important thing is the proper preparation of the items being presented to the Postal Service. What I mean by that is, when you present your letters, be sure that you've got addresses clearly written by having a correct zip code, and also it's a good idea to have a return address in the upper left-hand corner. In case you have an old address or somebody you haven't sent a Christmas card to in several years, there's a possibility they might have moved. So in that way, it will be returned to you in case they have moved, and there is not a forwarding address on the file. Now, the forwarding addresses are only good for 1 year, so it would be returned to you.
Here are some important tips for sending packages through the mail. Pad your gift well with newspaper or some sort of cushioning. If the gift rattles in the box, it hasn't been padded properly. Pack the gift in a strong corrugated fiberboard box. The container should be strong enough to prevent damage from handling. As an extra precaution, include your return address inside the package. Make sure the address and zip code of the person you're sending the gift to and your return address and zip are easy to read. Seal your package with reinforced tape. Use the tape for closures and reinforcement on flaps and seams. Do not use paper wrappers on fiberboard containers. Send irreplaceable articles, cash, and all items of more than $200 value by registered mail. The cost is $3 plus postage, including $100 of insurance on any article mailed within the United States. You can also buy additional insurance coverage if you wish. Use certified mail if you need a receipt. This is a less expensive way to obtain proof of mailing. By the way, the Postal Service tells us that we can usually save a full day on delivery time by posting mail early in the day. Finally, if you've slipped up and waited until the last minute to send your Christmas gift, you can make up for your tardiness. However, it's going to be costly. Express mail is the Postal Service's guaranteed overnight delivery service. A $5.50 minimum charge, an item deposited in person at a post office counter by 5 p.m. can be picked up as early as 10 o'clock in the morning the next business day at the post office nearest the address. And for $7.50 minimum charge, the package can be delivered to that address. The full amount of postage can be refunded if the Postal Service fails to meet this promise. So remember, the volume at the post office is going to zoom very quickly now, so follow these tips and your packages should arrive safely and in time for Christmas.
The heaviest property damage was concentrated in the eastern section of Montgomery, particularly in the Green Acres and Bellhurst subdivisions and the Fieldcrest apartment complex. In contrast with yesterday's ominous clouds, blue skies greeted residents today as they began cleaning up the destruction left by the storm. The brutal force of the tornado's winds were clearly evident. The Red Cross has established a relief center at the Fieldcrest Clubhouse. Close to 400 people were fed today, and the Red Cross is determining individuals' needs for food, clothing, and temporary housing. Disasters such as this one seem to bring out a sense of helpfulness in people. That was evident today in Green Acres as neighbors helped in the cleanup effort. The extent of the damage varies. A home touched by the storm sits surrounded by others that escaped unscathed. Some had light to moderate damage, but there were others not so lucky.
David and Dorothy Sims lived in this house on Gatewood Drive. They escaped unharmed. Their house was totally destroyed by the tornado, but they're still thankful that they're alive.
The Sims family is salvaging what they can from the rubble of their home. Dorothy Sims says if their insurance settles up as they hope it does, they'll rebuild their home and start their lives over. Michael Jones, WSFA TV News.
The mayor says he doesn't think Montgomeryans will qualify for federal disaster relief because most property was covered by insurance. He says some persons might be able to get temporary housing if the governor declared a state of emergency, but the governor has indicated no plans to do that. The mayor says it's a credit to the civil defense warning system that more persons weren't hurt. All damage reports aren't in yet, but Farmer says 7 houses in the Green Acres subdivision were demolished, 15 suffered major damage, and 30 received minor damage. At Fieldcrest Apartments, of the 80 units damaged, 50 are no longer habitable. In Bellhurst, 10 houses received minor damage when trees fell on them, and in Gunter Industrial Park, the Best Pack Company's roof caved in. In other business, the mayor explained to the council his plan for bringing recently annexed areas into the city. In January, some new residents will start receiving city services such as sanitation and street maintenance. No one in the newly annexed areas will start paying city taxes until October 1st. By that time, the mayor hopes all those areas will be receiving full city services. The council also heard from citizens who had recommendations for the 1979, 80, and 81 Community Development Block Grant. One man protested spending money on Baldwin Community Center. He says the money should be used for what he calls more important things, such as drainage problems and crime prevention. The council is supposed to take into consideration all public suggestions when preparing the city's grant application. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News at Montgomery City Council.
And I think our message is very clear to Ayatollah Khomeini. We want him to understand clearly that blacks are Americans first, and he or no one else in the world should try to separate us from America. The differences we have in our country are in-house. These are our problems. We will solve them in-house. But for anybody in the world to try to take a posture that black people in a time like this should not be considered as full-fledged Americans is wrong. And the message we send to Iran and the rest of the world is that we support President Carter, the way that he's handling this very difficult situation. We shall never be satisfied until all of the hostages are released, because they are Americans first, and we have to be concerned about that.
Well, Phil, at first it wasn't just an arbitrary decision of mine. We got together with the players and we just agreed that, you know, we'd been talking enough all year and through Thanksgiving, and now it's time to buckle down and get out and work and for the task at hand. And we're just trying to win the game, and we've got a lot of preparation to do, and we just felt like that if that would help any, that's what we ought to do.
We can't speak to the players, Coach. We'll have to ask your opinion of what they think. How is their confidence going to this game?
Well, Phil, I think our players have confidence in this football team. I think it's grown and it's developed, and I think they believe in each other. I think that's a key, and of course, confidence is having success. And we've had some success this year, and they've played together and they've stuck together, and their attitude and morale is good, and they're enjoying playing football. So I feel like that's a plus, and certainly I would hope our team thinks they can win any game that they play if they play well and hard.
The holiday spirit was in the air. It appeared in the delighted faces of children watching the floats, in the wave of the honorary parade marshals, and in the bouncing step of marchers. Even the weather cooperated. The clear night was warm enough to be comfortable, but a slight chill assured everyone that Christmas is on its way. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News.
I was a little bit worried about it at first, because I didn't really think I was big enough to play fullback. But, Coach Beck and Coach Barfield talked to me, and they showed me the type of offense we were going to run. And, I was more than willing to try, and I was just glad that I've had as much success as I've had.
Is there a chance that this has made you a more complete football player and perhaps enhanced your pro prospects?
I'd say that it definitely made me a more complete player, because it's given me the opportunity to block a lot more, and I've also gotten to come out of the backfield on some short passes, and so I feel like it's probably helped me out as far as the draft is concerned. But it's something that I've always had. I just never was called on to really do it.
Alabama is home for me. It's where I was educated, and I'm anxious now to get to the business of the daily operations. Thank you very much.
Favor, please raise your right hand.
Any objections? Maybe some questions from some members of the board for Madam President.
Sorry, Dr. Mr. Poole is not here, Governor. I did point out that, but the camera set behind them. I'd like to recommend to the board the appointment of Dr. Judy 3.5% results because this firm had already done some work on this project earlier, which is not to be funded. So,
Inflation is taking its toll on workers' income. The average weekly earnings, after adjusting for inflation, declined 1.1% in October and were 5.2% lower than October a year ago. Today's report by the Labor Department says last month's advance in the cost of living was led by a sharp jump in housing cost, up 1.5%. Medical care rose 1%, the largest increase since January. Clothing costs were up 0.2%, reflecting fall sale prices. Retail gasoline prices averaged slightly more than $1 per gallon in October. While this is up 0.8 cents, the increase is lower than the August and September increase of more than 3 cents. Grocery store prices rose 0.7% in October. Prices for meat, poultry, fish, and eggs were up. But there may be some relief ahead before Christmas. The Alabama Farm Bureau's monthly food price survey reveals a 2.8% decrease in November, primarily in the price of produce, pork, beef, and dairy products.
The Labor Department says that if price increases continue during the next 2 months at the same rate they did during the first 10 months of this year, the nation will end the year with an inflation rate of 13.1%. That's the worst since price controls were removed following World War II. Michael Jones, WSFA TV News.
What we're doing is taking the present tax, which is 5% on all whiskey and wine purchases at the wholesale level, and asking that now this be changed to a 2% tax at the retail level, because we can trace that a lot better than we can now with the pouring out of the half-gallon bottles and so forth. We can trace it a lot better at the retail level, and all this will do is give us the same amount of tax that we got before and make sure that we get it. Our revenues are down now that with the demise or the doing away with the miniatures, our taxes are falling off a little bit, and we want to make sure that the city gets what it's entitled to.
Whether he was speaking of energy or inflation, Reagan always returned to the theme of bureaucracy. He says the government caused inflation and only the government can cure it. He says he'd like to stop the flow of cash that goes to the government in the form of taxes and back to the people as grants. One of his proposals is that the government eliminate the income tax on interest earned in savings accounts. And he says government paperwork adds $35 a day to the cost of a hospital stay.
And there is a senator in Massachusetts who says the answer to our health care problems is to turn the whole thing over to government. I don't think we can afford that kind of teddy care.
Though Reagan is critical of Democratic candidates and the current administration, he's trying hard not to alienate Democratic voters.
I am criticizing not the rank and file Democrats of this country. I am criticizing the leadership of the party, a leadership that made so many of us change because we could no longer follow them. I believe that in this country there are millions of rank and file Democrats just as patriotic as anyone in this land and just as unhappy with the way things are going as the rest of us are. And we as Republicans should be appealing to them to join us now, whether in name or not, but at least in practice, to make a change in that leadership that is governing our affairs.
Reagan says the Iranian crisis wouldn't have happened if it weren't for the weakness and vacillation of the Carter administration. And he says the Republican Party offers the best hope for strengthening the country. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News, Birmingham.
Joe Cribbs, James Brooks. James Brooks, Joe Cribbs. Either way you look at it, it's a powerful combination. In fact, you could call them big and little poison. Both of them can kill you in a football game, and it's a combination Alabama will have to stop this weekend. But how do you go about doing that?
Well, first of all, you get a few extra jets and put them on the bottom of your feet so you can move a lot faster.
I think we just going to have to go out and play
play like we normally do. Just go out and play tough and try not to give up big runs like they've been getting in the past. Just try to more or less contain them. We're going to have to prevent them from establishing the mental game and force them to use the outside game, and then hope our pursuit can stop that.
Before you start feeling sorry for Masters Hanna and Hamilton, you have to remember Alabama has a pretty fair defense. In fact, Alabama leads the entire nation in total defense, pass defense, and scoring defense. If that isn't enough to stop Auburn, then Bear Bryant might just have to stay home and plow. But the Bear says there are worse fates than plowing.
It isn't when you compare with coaching. There's a whole lot of old people plowing. There's not many old folks coaching. But I don't know. I think I said I might have to go back to plowing. I might. But I don't think I said I'd be plowing if we lost. I don't have my needles. I think it's kind of like in order.
Well, that should settle the issue. You can't ask a man to stay home and plow if he doesn't have the right kind of mules. But then Auburn would like nothing better than to see Bear Bryant head out to pasture. Fred Albers, WSFA TV Sports.
Reagan says the country needs a fresh approach to foreign affairs, and he says that new approach should begin with shelving the proposed SALT II agreement and continue with a stronger stand toward Iran's Ayatollah Khomeini, whom Reagan calls a demented dictator.
This situation prevails today because of the weakness and the vacillation and the inconsistencies of the foreign policy of the present administration.
In trying not to alienate Democratic voters, Reagan clarified that he's not criticizing the rank-and-file Democrats, only the country's Democratic leader. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News, Birmingham.
You might never guess it, but this shopping center at Capitol Parkway houses one of Santa's workshops. Behind these doors, toys and clothing are stored. And Santa's elves, the tough guys, come in to repair and fix them for needy families. The tough guys are the members of the Youth Aid Division of the Montgomery Police Department. Last year, the men and women in this department played Santa Claus to 42 families, 269 people in the community.
However, this is done throughout the year. In investigating a child neglect or an abuse case, and we actually find out that, in fact, this is a destitute family rather than a neglect case or an abuse case, we get involved, and of course this is one of the numbers of the people that we help for Christmas.
Well, we work a lot of this on our off time. We also, our supervisors, they are in the spirit too, the Christmas spirit, and they kindly let us off a little bit to work on this program.
The entire police department gets involved, along with the Youth Aid Division in the program. Department stores contribute new and slightly damaged toys, and other donations come from neighborhood civic groups and individuals. If you have some things to contribute, call Youth Aid and a policeman will pick them up.
I've always felt real proud of the Youth Aid Division, that Youth Aid personnel had special feelings for people. I've been in Youth Aid for 8 years, and I've always felt real proud to be a part of it. And to be a part of Youth Aid Division and work with young people, I feel that this is part of it.
Police officers work their off hours for this program and all Christmas Eve delivering gifts. Without it, many children would not be able to experience the many joys associated with Christmas. Ivy Berman, WSFA TV News.
This Weather Service map of last Sunday's storm damage shows a path beginning with tornado damage in extreme northwest Florida, then passing as a very definite line through damaged areas at Evergreen, Greenville, Leader-Hatchie, Montgomery, on to Elmore County and Lake Martin. Though not an isolated event, the Montgomery tornado produced the heaviest damage in the state by far, and the head of the local office of the National Weather Service is amazed there weren't more injuries or even fatalities. Paul Pettit believes that in more ways than one, people were prepared.
We did have good warnings in this particular case, almost a 20-minute lead time. Of course, some people didn't have that much time because they didn't possibly hear the warnings or didn't know until the storm was coming. But I think that a lot of the people knew what to do.
Knowing what to do, says Pettit, also involves knowing when to do it. He urges everyone to learn the difference between a watch and a warning.
I've already found out this morning through some interviews that some people were confused about what a watch was and what a warning was. For instance, some of them thought that we had a warning out for Barbara County when actually they were under a watch. Know the difference between a watch and a warning. Also, what to do when the sirens go off, when the media broadcasts a warning. Have a pre-planned place where you're going to go and a designated procedure that you're going to go through, just like if you have fire drills in your home, same thing with tornado drills. In most instances, you're only going to have a very short time to take this action. Fortunately, in this case, we had a little bit more time, but in all the cases, it won't be like this. You maybe only have seconds.
Like most cities, Montgomery's brushes with tornado disaster have come in frequently, causing some concern over the years that most people wouldn't take the dangers of a tornado seriously and wouldn't know what to do. What happened last Sunday afternoon apparently indicated that most people were more prepared than would have been supposed, and the Weather Service takes that as proof that advanced planning is the key to surviving severe weather. I'm Dan Atkinson with Weather Beat.